Morning all. We'll just give it another couple of minutes, if it's okay.
Morning, Isaac.
Hi, how are you, Nazir?
Very good, thanks. How are you?
Very good, thank you. I hope you guys are keeping safe at your...
Yeah, we're good so far.
I hope we are all home.
We are, yeah, well, we're home, yeah. 4 weeks now.
It's not, yeah, it's not, it's quite challenging times.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, we're just giving a couple of more minutes for everybody to join. I just want to check, everybody can see the screen that I've shared.
Yes.
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 Yep. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, if okay, we just give it 1 more minute, then we could possibly start. I'm just waiting for James to join us. Thank you for your patience.
Okay, perfect. And Rod and Tim.
Hi, Karen.
Hi. I see James is in.
Thank you. Okay. I think we could slowly start. James, welcome.
Morning, guys.
Okay. So just quickly, just to run through, we'd like to try and keep it as quick as possible. The main aim is obviously just to, what the agenda would be is just to sort of go through a little bit of the truth, how to know when you are potentially in danger, and what to do when it's actually happening, and sort of just a couple of tips. And we would like to cut it like within the space of 20-25 minutes. So the idea would be we go to up to 9:15, and then we'll just get a bit of an experience share more on what James is doing, and just his experience on things that actually happened in the past. And then at the end of it, we will share some free tools that you could use at your house and via email, and then questions and answers could start maybe just right after James's experience. So thank you everybody for joining. I'll be recording the meeting also, so that you know, and we will make it available afterwards. So just some of the facts that, and the reality that we are dealing with at the moment in security, around security and online security, that 1 out of 5 companies hit by ransomware, and this are forced to potentially close. And these are just because some basic principles wasn't in place. And this is stats from Computer Weekly. Smaller companies are sort of more under the radar for hackers. because of the main fact that if you have to compare with a large bank or a large corporation, they can't employ a whole team of security specialists to ensure that they're in a good space. So the focus is normally on smaller companies, and in the region of less than 100 employees, that's a more easy target for hackers. So almost 70% of small companies are aware of the true risk of hacking, and they almost have a don't believe attitude. It can't really happen to us until it actually happens to us. And we've seen this in the past, even in the last couple of years, where clients actually had financial loss. And 75% of all attacked businesses reported are via emails. So, and there are obviously ways that these could be sort of maintained, and but most of your problems are coming through emails. So that's it. Then just some of the key points, how to sort of identify when something is going wrong, or how to know when you are hacked. So one of the most common ways, especially in the past also, was random messages, pop-ups that comes up, unwanted toolbars, unknown software that's installed on your computer. All of a sudden you have something new on your computer, toolbars on your browser that you're not familiar with, notifications that you might be infected, and random messages. That might be a sign that something is going on. Fake emails, protection alerts that comes in. I think this is quite a common one where you might get your account has expired, and the natural tendency is to click on to update the details, and what you might be doing at that moment is actually presenting your actual, say for example, it's saying your Office 365 account is expiring. You actually presenting your potential username and password to this potential hacker, where you are actually typing away your username and password by reacting on that fake email request or your Dropbox account, or something that you might be very familiar with, and it's very believable when you actually look at the email or alert. And that is quite a common one where you can actually share your password. And then there's a lot of other dangers around the password sharing. If you might be using, potentially, let's say it's a Dropbox account coming in, you've typed in your username and password, they will know this is for Dropbox and potentially will work. But if you are using the same username and password for, example, your iTunes account or your Apple account, so it's a good practice to have a demarcation, especially in your personal capacity, if you can't have sophisticated systems, to have a different username and password for your banking, for your iTunes, for your personal social media accounts. It's always just an additional layer of safeguarding. Another one to very quickly pick up that something is wrong is that if you get redirected when you are searching, and potentially the landing page is not where it's supposed to go to, it's not a page you are familiar with. Social media invitations, all of a sudden you have a lot of people that want to invite you, or you've sent out the invitation to other people that you've actually never sent. That's another indication that your social media might have been hacked, when your friends are receiving invitations or messages that you've actually never sent. Or all of a sudden you might also be getting actual invitations that one of your friends might be actually hacked on social media. Another one also might be if all of a sudden your password doesn't work. It might be something to pay attention to and say, oh, well, something might have happened in the meanwhile, and immediately try and pick up to go and change your password if you can. File access is denied. This is, especially in a network or corporate environment, all of a sudden you can't access the files, it's not readable. That might be ransomware that actually goes into your file system and actually start encrypting the files, and potentially for you to be able to access those files will be where you have to actually pay a ransom for them to unencrypt it. So immediately when you can't access the files, it might be a sign that you need to take immediate action and see what you can do to stop the damage. So here's some of the steps that we recommend during a hack, what you can do, how you can safeguard yourself. You need to stop the damage immediately. So trying to isolate the network. If you're on a corporate network, to potentially take it off. If the server is, or the central file solution has been sort of damaged, to potentially go and take it off the network immediately, or change the permissions that everybody has to access the files or applications. It's very difficult if you have multiple devices on your network to actually isolate the whole network will be difficult, but to take off, potentially stop the whole network from working, and then slowly start bringing in the devices back online onto the network might be a way also to identify where the problem might come from. Do a total scan, make sure all your antivirus is up to date, run a full scan on all the workstations, all the endpoints, to potentially find out where the problem came in. Take a full inventory of applications installed. It might be a good exercise to, if you have some software that can centralize it, that has got a central inventory of all the applications, and have a look at actually any applications that might be new on your systems. One of the other potential issues might also be that somebody gained access to some of the accounts, and to go and change the passwords immediately for all the key accounts, potentially financial systems, your online accounting software, change passwords immediately to lock down. Some proactive survival tips. We see that it's very difficult to find a way of really saying this is the solution, but I think we have a scenario even within our company to making the staff consistently aware of potential issues where somebody attempted to intercept our accountant's emails and actually in a very clever way at the right time send the email and say, sorry, let me just, I've just done the mute there. So where they waiting for the right time, and they actually just ask us to change the bank details for our local bank account has changed. So to just be aware, to have that additional check, just so that staff is aware, because again, it goes back to it's very believable, just to do that extra due diligence. Is this email true? Did you send this email? Training, awareness, is potentially the key area that we can do, besides for having the systems, but to actually consistently have some sort of program where you relay messages to your staff. HR procedures, this is a very common also, to make sure that when you are onboarding and offboarding, especially the offboarding of a staff member or a supplier, what access do they have? Because there are a lot of scenarios where you might have 7 or 8 systems that people might have access to. You might have Salesforce, you might have a purchasing ordering software, you might have a accounts package, and you might have locked their emails down, but have you actually checked? Has the VPN been removed? Has the Salesforce accounts been closed down? Assign somebody within a company that will relay the message consistently about security and making people aware of it, making sure that they understand this is a reality. Review relationships, stale accounts, again, going back to the offboarding procedure, making sure that you have actually locked down, you have actually disabled these accounts. And that there is definitely an element. 65% of companies have over 1,000 stale accounts where the actual relationship has not been reviewed. So it might be a good exercise to have a quarterly or a monthly checkup. Have we taken action? Who has got access? And have somebody assigned to the accounts department. Should these people, should these suppliers still have access to these accounts? File access, this is also very common. It's very important to, on a regular basis, very similar to accounts, to actually go and check. We have a directors folder on our common drive. Who has got access to it? Because it might be that somebody within the organization no longer works for the accounts department, but they might be working for the sales department, but they still have access to the accounts folders, or other way around. Or make sure that new folders that's been created for directors has been locked down. And this will come down to, again, a regular healthy exercise of building in procedures of saying, we need to check these, what is critical within the company, what files do we need to ensure is always locked down, and make sure that there's the correct permissions applied. File locations, I'm just conscious of the time, so file locations, ensure the files are stored in a central location. Make sure that everybody is not using their own flavor of file storage or free solutions out there. Make sure your company organization is got the policy and the protocol. This is what we do with files. This is how we align with file sharing, and make sure it's in a single location. What are the policies around where we allowed to store files? Are we allowed to store files on the local computers? And that's possibly just an example, not a good practice. Make sure that systems are connected as much as possible. Everybody talks about the word single sign-on. Basically what it means is that the username and password that you are using to log onto your computer is the same username and password that you are using for your emails. And normally, if that's not the case, that means you don't have a well-connected system. And so the benefit of a well-connected system, and there are solutions out there where you can have your Salesforce or your Dropbox also connected to one system. So meaning if your HR goes through a procedure of actually disabling a user, all those systems will be shut down immediately. So it's a very important thing, and it's almost like the core of within a company to have a system that's well connected. Network safety, obviously installing antivirus and firewalls, and then it's very important to be able to bring in some solution that can actually give you some transparency on what are the behaviors, if this person takes the laptop out of the office, not only in the office, to make sure you have some sort of safety. Make sure your systems are up to date. Security update is probably the most basic that we can do from a technical point of view, and make sure your antivirus is up to date. And also, there are some bodies that you can actually do internal testing. James, I'm going to hand over to you in a minute, if it's okay.
Yeah, mate, no worries.
Yeah. So internal testing, you get some independent companies that will come in and do a data risk discovery to see what are your staff actually storing on their workstation level, and what data might be personal data. And there's a cyber essential scheme that will also do a assessment for you and internal testing. Make sure that you follow best practice, and it's actually a certificate very similar to a ISO 27001 that you can put on your company's sort of certification level. Assumptions for the cloud. A lot of people believe as soon as we are on the cloud, everything is backed up, everything is up to date, which is not always the case. And it's always worth checking. Make sure that you have the policies that you would have applied when you didn't use the cloud. Make sure there are backups. Make sure it's updated. Who is looking after the backups also? Multi-factor authentication. That's one of the things. Don't just have a password. When you log on, there's a text message coming through. And I'm just about to hand over to James. I think there's one more. Strong passwords is another strong policy that we make sure it's not basic passwords. And then I think the one I just want to finish off with is the misconception about we are using this service, the backups. Is the backups encrypted? Do you have backups from a different provider? If you are, example, using a Dropbox solution, make sure you're using a different company to do the backups. Or if you are using zero accounts, try and not use the same company to do the backups. And then I think the most common issue that we've seen is you might be paying for a backup service, but who's actually looking at, is this backup actually working? You might religiously, day in and day out, change the USB hard drive or the paying for the monthly fee for the backups, but is it a managed service? Who is actually taking action if the files are not backing up? And there are a lot around backups, but I guess backup is the only thing that could safeguard you and potentially take you out of that statistics of 1 out of 5 companies, because you can eventually, besides for reputation loss, but you can eventually recover from any sort of disaster if you have a good backup solution. So I can't speak enough about backups, but that's me ending. And I'd love to just hear a little bit more from James and his experiences within his organization. James, do you mind just briefly tell us what you do, if you don't mind? Thank you.
Yeah, so I've got multiple businesses. I've got 5 normally. Obviously, I'm down to 3 at the moment with what's going on. And 3 of those are Rio qualifying, which is something myself and Izak are both part of. And I've been victim of a couple of different types of hack. The first one was on my events company. They seem to be tracking the number of hits we were getting to the website. We get sort of 25 to 30,000 visits a week, and we do about 6,000 transactions a week. During a busy period, which was September for us, we were getting about 10,000 transactions a week. So they tried to hack the site for the data, and then they tried to hack our PayPal account, which at that point had quite a significant amount of money in it for the business. Luckily, they didn't get through, but we had systems in place where we had ghost servers, which is like fake passport ports for them to try and hack. I think, Izak, is that right? Yeah. And they recognized that immediately and ignored it and focused on the real deal, which said that these guys were sort of quite professionals. And that came out of Indonesia, it looked like, in the end, we found out. Yeah. And then the second type of fraud was actually in a B2B business that I've got, that we do experiential marketing and activations on behalf of brands. And we had a change of accounts person, and they managed to get in somehow into that old person's email account and get it so that all her outgoing emails were also being forwarded to them. And then when they realized she left, they got into our new account woman's emails as well. And they just sat very patiently, we think, for a little while and waited until we signed a new client, which at the time was Wahlburgers, which is Mark Wahlberg's burger company. When they launched in London, we did their London launch for them. And we sent them out a sort of £6,500 invoice for a week's work. And they then followed up, having already copied our invoice exactly. So they'd redesigned it all, but with our logo, the way we look, because we have everything designed, we've got in-house graphics designers, so everything looked quite nice coming out of my business. Yeah, but they'd copied it all. And then they just said to them, "Oh, I'm really sorry. Our bank details have actually changed, and I sent you the old bank account." And so Wahlburgers paid the money to the wrong account, which left everyone in a little bit of an awkward situation, because I don't normally start any work until I've been paid. They'd obviously paid it, so everyone felt they were kind of in the right at this point. After a sort of back and forth kind of strange conversation with them saying, no, we definitely have paid it, and here's the invoice, and then us realising at one point or another the bank details have been changed, we were in an awkward situation as to whose fault it was. Obviously, our account had been hacked. So, you know, it's kind of our fault, but then their person had paid the wrong bank account. So from a legal standpoint, it made it completely their fault. But we agreed to split the risk with them. And luckily we eventually got the money back and we got paid by Wahlburgers. But we found out that this is quite commonplace. And even a friend of mine who has an estate agency had the same thing happen with someone's housing deposit, which was about £40,000, which was obviously a significant amount of money. So this is super, super common. So we use two-step authentication for everything now. And we also have a statement at the bottom of our initial contracts and on our invoices now that says, if our bank account details change, we'll never email you about any changes until we've spoken to you first.
Yeah.
And that's what we move to. And you know, thankfully these things are few and far between and are rare, but actually I think it's more common than you realize. And it seems to me that these hackers kind of know what they're doing, you know, like the first hack, the email hack, was a very different type of hack to the B2C hack, where they were the events company hack, where they seem to probably going after cash in PayPal, or trying to put up initially. My web guy said to me they tried to put up a false gateway, so put a page in between the pages so that they could start collecting revenue. So it's
very real, very sophisticated. But I love what you're saying about adding it to your terms and conditions and at the end of at the bottom of your invoice. And in a scenario where you get into a legal conversation with, if they paid it into the wrong account, it puts you in the demarcation of not actually having the liability. It's actually their fault.
Yeah, I just think it's like this age-old thing, isn't it? As business owners and operators, I think we find ourselves in this position where we sort of all, in a scenario, a bit like coronavirus at the moment, actually, where we all kind of have to work together. You know, I made sure the work got done for Wahlburgers. You know, I knew they were good for that money. You know, I'd agreed with them, listen, it's me and you, let's split the risk down the middle. I knew it means I was going to take a loss. They were going to take a loss if we didn't get the money back. I was very patient. They got the money back. You know, as soon as they got the money back, they paid me out in full, you know. So it's also meant I maintained a very good relationship with them, and we continue to work with them as a client. But you know, you're in that awkward position where no one in my organization or in their organization had actually done anything wrong, you know. So you've kind of all got to work together, I think, a little bit in that scenario. And I would say remain calm. The banks are pretty helpful. I will say that. In our scenario, they did investigate fully. I've heard scenarios where employees, so if my employee had transferred funds, there could be an issue there where it then becomes my fault because they should check first. But so I have heard stories of, for example, emails coming from the directors of companies saying, "Oh, hiya, Sharon, can you transfer me $5,000 to this account, please, to pay this client?" And it turns out it's a completely fraudulent email. I've heard of stories of that being quite commonplace. And I've even been a victim, actually myself, around tax time, of HMRC phone calls. I got a phone call from HMRC saying, you've got an outstanding tax bill, you haven't paid it all, and you will be prosecuting and collecting at some point. Obviously, I've then panicked. I spoke to my business partner and said, "What's this? What have we..." Because I've got multiple companies, there's always a small chance I might have something not paid. I rang my business partner and said, and he takes care of all that stuff, and said to him, "Yo, why am I getting threatening phone calls?" And he said to me, no. And it turned out it was fraud as well. So I think, you know, if you've got a company in the UK, it's company's house, but you tend to
just pay. You just keep quiet and pay, even if it's a mistake. Yes, I know. I understand.
You'll be careful. Yeah.
No, thank you. I mean, James, so thank you very much for that. So if anybody can obviously ask you questions afterwards, email what you've done. So anybody can contact James afterwards, maybe if you have similar scenarios and not sure how to deal with that, websites, anything in those lines. So we can go over to questions and answers. Any questions? If somebody's trying to speak, just check you're not on mute.
Hello, Isaac.
Hi, is that Johan from Netherlands?
I'm Georgie. I'm from.
Oh, apologies. Okay, I wasn't sure. So, okay, excellent. How are you doing?
Doing good, good. Here.
Good, thank you.
And my fiance, she have a question for you.
Sure, no
Yeah,
problem.
hi. I wanted to ask about that part where you said that, for example, we need to have the same password when we log into our computer and the same password that we should use for our emails. But is this safe? Because I was thinking if they manage to hack my email address, then wouldn't they be more capable to log into my whole computer, or I didn't understand it right?
Yes, no, thank you. Just to clarify, that's more the recommendation of having connected systems, or the single sign-on is for corporate environments, especially with if you have got a company, you've got emails, you've got SharePoint, you have OneDrive, you have Salesforce, to have all of them connected, especially during the offboarding. But in a personal capacity, my recommendation would be to have a different username and password, or different password for your banking, for your iTunes, for your Amazon account, for your Netflix. So that's going to be impossible for you to anyway implement a highly sophisticated connected system or single sign-on system with two-factor authentication. It will be virtually impossible in your personal capacity. But for corporate networks or businesses, we recommend that single sign-on experience.
Yeah.
I would say as well, if you've got staff, one thing we had to change was that we wrote into their employment contracts, if they ever want to leave, that the last 48 hours of their work is now solely dedicated to sitting with our office manager or my business partner, whoever takes care of it at that point, handing over their passwords, logging into and handing over or closing down all of the access accounts. Because I don't know about your businesses, but in my businesses, it's an awful lot of stuff these days. It's Monday.com, it's Outlook Express, it's a stock images company, it's Dreamweaver, it's so we have Salesforce, Zoho, whichever one they're using. There's an awful lot of accounts they've got, and even things like mobile phones. We got to a point with O2 where I had so many O2 accounts, even once we paid the phones off, I just had to cancel all my O2 accounts to make O2 call me so that I could figure out who'd got the accounts. And often where staff have had issues, they'd move the accounts into their name as the account holder or whatever. So then when the staff left, O2 wouldn't deal with me. So I said, well, hold on a minute. I paid the bill. It's my business. Even though I was a majority shareholder, they were still used to dealing with the person who was holding the account. So for us now, and then if they don't do that, so if they don't come in, it's in their employment contracts that we withhold their pay until that's complete. So that tends to mean we get it done, because you know what staff can be like. They try not to come in on those last couple of days or suddenly develop sickness, you know what I mean? So go drinking in this sunny weather. Yeah. So
in lockdown.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so we found we wrote it into their contracts.
Excellent. No, that's every time we speak, James, there's more secrets you're revealing. Can you just give everything at once? Thank you. Any other questions?
I don't have a question, but I'd like to just add here that the way we do it at Xero is specifically for the passwords is we use an app called LastPass that has all the company passwords in it. So if anybody needs access to an Office 365 account or a Google Suite or whatever, be it marketing, sales, technical, they have access to that group of passwords. And when they leave the company, we just remove them from that access group and they immediately cut out. I don't know, that potentially is something that might be worth looking at.
Yes, and I think what's also very good about it is that it's difficult to manage, but what's very good about it is that you can set a level where they can't see the password. So even if they had to leave the company, they never had an actual revelation of the actual email or of the password. And obviously with our scenario, we have engineers and access to companies, clients. So which is obviously a good practice. So they can only access it via that application, and they can't change the passwords in the application. So it's like a password vault that's encrypted. So that's another very good tool of managing passwords.
And Karen, do you do that? Because you say Xero is in XER, the accountancy software,
No,
yeah?
no, Zero, as in Zero Limited, Isaac's company.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I was like, geez, they're massive. Because do you guys have satellite offices as well?
Yes.
Yeah, you do, don't you? Yeah.
So, but with the vault, you can actually have different levels, and so you can have a marketing and accounts, and so obviously I don't want everybody to have access to all of the accounts information. Yeah. So we can have certain groups of people having access to it. And there's another solution also for especially your scenario, James, that I can think of that we're using at another company that is going back to the connected system. So you have it as a central point where it will connect to Monday.com, Zoho, and it's a product called One Logon, or there's another product called Okta. So you can have absolutely everything connected, and as soon as you shut it down, it shuts down. Okay, and they never have to deal with passwords.
That'd be awesome to do that. Because obviously, because my digital agency, in my digital agency, we have so many, every client's at the moment, everyone, and I don't try and argue with anyone anymore because it's easier just to go with their idea. It's like, oh, we love Basecamp, or oh, we love Monday.com, or oh, we love, they've all got this Trello or whatever it is. So my guys work across, I mean, they're all masters in every single one of these different systems, and they're all muchness to be fair, yeah. But I used to try and convert clients onto Monday or onto Basecamp. But actually, it's easier just to work on this because often they've got their accounts, their sales, their whole teams on one system. So one of the challenges is we've got logins for all these different systems, for all these different, a bit like yourself, I suppose, for all these different clients in that business, you know.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, James. Thank you, Karen. Anybody else?
Isaac?
Sure.
Which operating system is the safest?
I mean, look, are you talking about between potentially Microsoft and Apple? I don't think it's a massive. Sorry, go again, George.
Yes.
What did you say?
Yeah, between Mac, Windows, and Linux.
Look, this is quite an interesting conversation, but that's a whole new meeting we can arrange. But they are the audience and the actual players in the Mac market has grown a lot. But don't record me on this, or don't put it on social media. But essentially, Mac is 10 years behind in security. But the only reason, this was a couple of years ago, so I don't know if it's still current, but the key reason is that hackers are not going to pay attention to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5% or 10% of the audience at that time in the world, where most of the users at that time of this statistic, 90% of the users were using Microsoft. So the target it's more lucrative to target the bigger audience, where where at that stage, the example they were using is like Mac is in a standing faraway desert, and why would anybody target them? Where Microsoft, I think Microsoft is very strong, and it's definitely a corporate tool. I think the dangers with Mac is if you set up a Mac in a corporate environment, but you don't have the Mac in on the single sign-on solution, where there's a tendency for people to say, oh, it's a Mac, it's secure. That's not necessarily the case. So.
At the end of the day, also, it depends, a lot of people's got their own, you can say, flavor that they want to try and get into. Like Isaac said there, in connection with Windows, obviously it was more easily available, so obviously the bigger target. But at the end of the day, if you target a specific device, it's not necessarily the operating system. If they get in with a spoofing email, you still you're still going to log onto that web page and still going to put in your username and password and still going to reveal that to the world. And it doesn't make sense, okay, what platform you're working on.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions, guys?
I could tell you about another really interesting hack we had.
Thank you.
I
Please,
forgot about it.
the secrets are coming out more and more. Please, James.
Well, I can tell I've been in business too long. Yeah. This was actually on Facebook. So we had a Facebook hack at Christmas. I forgot about this. I'd never even told you about this, Isaac. We had a Facebook hack this Christmas. We were spending a significant amount of money on our Facebook ads account because New Year's Eve was coming up, and one of my businesses does events. And we're doing lots of club events over New Year's Eve. And a Chinese-based bed sheets company somehow got into that ads account, and what they did was they changed all the audiences in the account to their Chinese audience, and they then spent all the ad money that we had in the account, £10,000 actually. Luckily, about £3,000 in, Facebook spotted that all the audiences have changed, so Facebook froze the account. Now that seems like a brilliant thing to do, which it was. The only problem we had was it was 48 hours away from New Year's Eve, so we were selling tickets like 500 to 1,000 tickets a day, so sort of 20 to 40,000 in revenue a day, and all of a sudden I had all that frozen. So luckily, we then spoke to one of our clients who kindly said to me, yeah, register your Amex card on my account, and use my account. So we had to copy our audio to target a card properly. We got the money back from Facebook really quickly, and I'll actually help is because we've got a Facebook assigned manager.
Isaac, you back?
Apology, I just had internet connectivity problems at the house, so apology for that.
Here we go.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Apologies for that. David, could you share with us that article on Mac?
Hi guys. So I'm just going to post an article to the group that you can refer to. It was written earlier this year, actually in February, where it talks specifically around vulnerabilities between Microsoft and Mac. Now, going back to Isaac's first comment there, that he mentioned that if you look at the market share and how many PCs, or let's rather call it workstations, are rather running Windows and Microsoft-based architecture versus Macintosh, which is essentially Unix-based. Over the last 15 to 20 years, we're definitely looking at market dominance from Microsoft. But what these guys are saying, and I'm not specifically going to go too much into the article, is that during the last couple of months and years, you can definitely see that the threats are rising on the Apple and Macintosh side if you compare it in the long run and looking at statistics versus Microsoft. So back to what Johannes also mentioned, a lot of the threats doesn't necessarily come in via websites as such. There's a lot of phishing attacks, which was also mentioned earlier, where the guys try to gather some information from emails and those sort of things. So something very much what James has also mentioned is something called social engineering, which I'm assuming a lot of you have heard that word, where people monitor your social status. So they would go into your LinkedIn accounts, they would go into Facebook, they will try and get as much information of you as possible in order to breach some sort of gateway or some sort of portal that you have access to in order to gain their goal at the end of the day. So I'm going to post it on the group. If you guys have any questions, you're welcome to pose it back to Isaac, but it's a very good read. There's always been this consensus that Mac is more secure and Linux and Unix systems are more secure than Windows, which is actually not the case. It's just the majority of systems out there is more Windows and Microsoft architecture. So I'll
Excellent.
share it, shoot any questions to Isaac. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I will also send at the end of this email with a link to that article. Thank you very
Great.
much for that, David. Anybody else that's got a question? Thank you. So what we'll do is I'll send the email to everybody that was in the meeting. We'll make it available. You're welcome to share the recording also with anybody that you might think would benefit from this. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Isaac.
James,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks, James. Thanks,
Thank you, guys.
Isaac. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.